Captain Halawufu reporting in, Fleet Lead. I say through the comm system built into the command station, sitting in front of my chair. Affirmative, Captain. Take your position with the rear guard of the fleet. Ship heading 48 degrees, was the response from the Fleet Leader's command ship, which was the largest starcraft in the fleet, sitting at just about twice the size of my own vessel. Confirmed, rear guard, heading 48. Helm, get us in our position and get the warp core heated up. Don't want to be the reason the fleet is held back. A single "Roger" was the quick and efficient response from my resident ship pilot, who was a fine deck officer if I had ever met one. They had always been the professional type, ever since I first met them, when I, along with most of the crew, were assigned to this ship. I swear, once the first round of promotions comes around, I'm recommending that they get a pay rise. They've earned it. As we finished aligning with the rest of the fleet, my warp engine controller sent the message that the ship would be ready to jump into our target system in an hour, which was about when the fleet leader should be given the order to move out. Apparently, we would be jumping into one of the humans' trading systems in order to cripple their economy to make the proper invasion fleet job that much easier. The Confederacy had just declared open war against the humans, and we were getting sent in as the first wave against the Human Federation. Our best military minds gave us captains the general rundown of the human situation, which was looking good so far. A near completely neutral party, who is focused solely on trade and diplomacy, and has so far never been at war, ever since they joined the galactic community nearly a century ago. Our projections put the conquest of human space lasting mere months, given the fact that the only sort of navy the humans could muster would be a small collection of small anti-pirate frigates, which our more advanced cruisers and carrier ships should make quick work of. With space superiority, the battles on the ground would be an easy matter, since all we would have to do is glass whatever military installations were present on the surface, before our ground troops could mop up whatever resistance is left. The humans so far have never even been in combat with another spacefaring species, preferring making concessions in order to avoid conflict, which was a sure sign of a pacifist species, which was supported by our estimates. A few hours after my ship took its place in the formation, I, along with all other ships in the fleet, received the message to engage warp drives and jump into the human system. Nodding to my warp engine controller and my pilot, I began to feel the slight hum of the warp engine before we all felt the ship shudder and shake. The view changed from the blank emptiness of the void into the strangely colourful insides of the warp. However, I didn't have the time to admire it, as after only a few moments we were in the human system. Looking around at the rest of the fleet, I see that we had all arrived at more or less the same formation, with only a slight amount of acceptable deviation. Gazing out into the system which we were here to soften up, I was mildly confused when I saw not a mustered human frigate fleet, but a collection of merchant ships and convoys floating around the system going about their normal duties, like they were not currently at war with a neighbouring empire. I was broken out of my confusion as I received a message from the fleet leader to advance towards the closest human convoy so that we may begin to engage. Relaying the message down to my pilot, we, along with the rest of the fleet, quickly began moving towards the convoy, which seemed to be entirely unperturbed by the approaching ships. I decided to order my scanner officer to begin checking the convoy for any oddities. Perhaps these were unmanned drone ships. That would explain why they were not reacting to our presence. However, the scanner tech reported that the ships were crewed with living people. Looking deeper into the transport ships, I eventually spotted multiple bulge-like clusters dotting the sides of the convoy, which pointed out into the emptiness of space, some of which pointed at the fleet. Before I could ponder this any further, the fleet leader ordered all ships to open fire on the convoy and destroy the transport ships before they can get away, and my weapons officer swiftly complied by firing off our laser weaponry at the vulnerable convoy, while the carrier flagship which the fleet leader was captaining from began to deploy their fighters and bombers. I watched as our lasers slammed into the hulls of the transport ships making up the convoy and did nothing, other than make some of the ship's armor plating glow a bit. As our fighters and bombers moved in to engage the convoy with their own weapons, I began ordering my crew to thoroughly scan the convoy ships for the reason our weapons had so little effect on them, when one of my sensor techs yelled out that they were detecting large energy spikes from the convoy ships. Feeling a pit form in my gut, I ordered my pilot to begin evasive maneuvers, and they did so without any hesitation, as I began receiving confused and angry messages from my fellow captains and superiors, demanding an answer for why I was breaking formation. That was until I watched, as nearly a third of our fighters exploded, halfway between the fleet and the convoy, which was followed quickly after by a flurry of explosions that dotted the fleet and caused many of our cruisers to begin reporting hull breaches. What in the world? I could hear the fleet leader demanding for order before I watched something slam into the carrier's bridge, at which point the audio feed cut off. I stood, petrified, and I heard a few members of my command staff exclaim something along the lines of, "Dear God," but only barely, as my mind raced to figure out how this was happening. Reaffirming my order for my pilot to evade whatever fire the fleet was being hit by, I was forced to watch, as one after another, the larger ships in the fleet were hit with the human strange weapons, before detonating in bright bursts of light, likely denoting that they had been hit in either the ammunition power stores or the reactor. Our fighters were not doing any better, as long streaks of whatever the human convoys fired out of their weapon mounts filled the void and occasionally caught a fighter or two. Some of the other captains who had not been hit by the humans' weapons began following my ship's lead, as many started to evade like I had, and a few even shot off a couple of lasers at the convoy to a similar effect as the first salvo. As more and more of our ships were taken down, while the human convoy remained unharmed, I, along with all of the remaining ships in the now decimated fleet, received a message from the convoy, ordering us to surrender, or else the last of us will be destroyed. My communications officer looked at me hesitantly, and modestly asked what would be our course of action. Looking around the bridge at my crew, I suddenly picked up the microphone from my command station and did my final duty as the captain of the Confederacy. I, Captain Halawuthu, hereby surrender to the Human Federation. As I put down the microphone, I could hear similar responses from my fellow captains. It would seem we have made a mistake ever coming here. Convoy leader John Doe looked at the debris field with a mild bit of satisfaction before clicking on the communications device set to broadcast to the rest of the convoy. Well, that was an easy victory. Alright boys, you heard their response. Let's turn these Xenos over to the police. I'm sure not getting paid to watch over them. Oh, and remember, if anyone asks, we all live in these ships, so this was all just home defense. God bless Space America.